Test 1 2 3 4 5.
Test 1 2 3 4 5.
Can you log in from an iPhone while you are trying that?
Yes, but this iPhone, I guess, can you do it on your phone?
Yeah, I can.
Do you have email on your phone?
Yeah.
You can do it on my phone. Do you have Zoom on your phone? I'm sorry.
So we have David Manfredi, who, yes. David, can you give us a sound check?
I sure can. How's that?
Thank you. Okay. Okay, and Daniel, Solomon Chamber is all set, so that's good.
Oh, great. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I now have 4 David Manfredi. The last person.
I noticed that.
That sounds about right.
I'm multiplying. I don't know what's happening.
As long as you're not cloning yourself.
You should have heard what his mother said about him.
We knew that was it.
I just saw that. I can't explain it.
You're really good
real,
at multitasking.
The real David Manfredi, I'm just going to rename you as David Manfredi Speaker so we know,
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
Who's who.
What was that television show where everybody stood up and said, I am David Manfredi? With 4 of them, and you got to guess, what was it?
To tell the truth.
Tell the truth. There you go.
Okay, I have the model in, I think it's also as another David Manfredi.
Should we label the one that's showing the model, Volpe model, or just model?
Okay, yeah, we can do that. What I'm trying to, okay, we do have one which says, okay.
So if you relabel that model, and then when it's time to show the model, you click on the 3 dots and you say spotlight for everyone. Then that's how we're going to show the model.
Sure. And I think the board specifically, I think ahead of the public comments or after the public comments. Daniel, do you remember? They definitely will announce that.
Yeah, it'll probably be after the public comments.
Okay, so I think we are okay. Do we want to just test that model video? What I meant is the camera of the.
I think it's someone holding an iPhone, so that's
okay.
as good as it's gonna get right now.
Okay.
So yeah, do you want to test the spotlight?
Go into test the spotlight.
Oh, okay.
Okay, got it. All right.
Okay.
Okay, looks good. Thank you.
All right, so it works. And so now we're going to turn off the camera for Volpe model.
Okay.
Turn it back on and when it's time to show the model.
Okay. Okay, I'm just going to let the rest of the unidentified David Manfredis just hang out there. I want to go on a search and hunt mission right now. Okay, so Mary's here. We can see you, Mary. Can you give us a quick sound check?
Yes, I can. Good evening.
Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome.
So hopefully we'll have more planning board members joining soon. And
Un saludo a todos los seguidores de
Daniel, the GTS team is also here in case the board wants to go first with the general business item.
Great,
If
and
for Steve.
Sal's aware that that may happen. Okay, great.
Yeah. And I think Catherine just now joined.
Hi.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Catherine.
Catherine, I just wanted to make sure that you saw the latest email from Steve that he's planning to join via phone up to like 7 o'clock. But you can still check with the board if, it's
Right. Makes sense to go to a general business item first.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
in
fine.
the event there is any transition issues between him. Okay. All right. I guess at this point we are good and just waiting for some of the other planning board members to join. Yeah, Aram is here. Okay, Hugh is here. Hugh, we can see you. Can you give us a quick sound check?
Good evening, Swati.
Thank you. Steve has joined. Okay. Daniel. I see a camera symbol for Steve. Ah, there he is. Thank you, Steve. Can you give us a quick sound check? I don't see a microphone symbol for him.
No.
Steve, are you able to hear us? Okay.
I take that as a no so far, right,
Yeah.
Swati?
So I think might be good to consider our plan B for general business item going first.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Now we are waiting for Tom and Lou and Ted.
Just as a matter of procedure, if Steve is logged in but can't hear us or communicate, is he present or is he absent or is he indisposed?
Oh, wait, it's saying he's connecting to audio. If he connects to audio, that question becomes moot, Daniel.
Yes, that is true.
That would be nice.
Steve, can you hear us? If possible, can you give us a sound check?
Yeah, yes, I can hear you.
Thank you.
Terrific. Thanks,
All right.
Steve.
Yes.
Yes, Ted is joining us. Ted, we can see you. Can you give us a quick sound check?
Yeah. Yes. I can see and hear you.
So, Catherine, we have arrived at 6:30. So if you feel comfortable giving it a few minutes, we can start with the updates and, hopefully by then, Lou and Tom would have joined us.
Right. I would say let's start the broadcast anyway, and because we do have a quorum at this point, and we can at least do the updates and et cetera. Hopefully everyone will have joined by the time those are over, and we can go from there.
Okay, so I'm going to temporarily mute everyone, but
Good evening, and welcome to the July 20th, 2021 meeting of the Cambridge Planning Board. My name is Catherine Preston Connolly, and I'm the chair. This meeting is being held remotely in accordance with Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, signed into law on June 16th, 2021. All board members, applicants, and members of the public will state their name before speaking, and all votes will be taken by roll call. Members of the public will be kept on mute until it is time for public comment, and I will give instructions for public comment at that time. You can also find instructions on the city's webpage for remote planning board meetings. This meeting is being video and audio recorded and is being streamed live on the City of Cambridge online meeting portal and on cable television channel 22 within Cambridge. There will also be a transcript of the proceedings. I'll start by asking staff to take board member attendance and verify that all members are audible.
Thank you, Catherine. Lou Bocci, are you present and is the meeting visible and audible to you?
Present and audible and visible.
Thank you, Lou. H. Theodore Cohen, are you present and is the meeting visible and audible to you?
Present, visible, and audible.
Thank you. Steve Cohen, are you present and is the meeting visible and audible to you?
Present, visible, and audible.
Thank you, Steve. Mary Flynn, are you present and is the meeting visible and audible to you?
I'm present and the meeting is both audible and visible to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Hugh Russell, are you present and is the meeting visible and audible to you?
Present, visible, audible.
Thank you, Hugh. Tom Sinevich, are you present and is the meeting visible and audible to you?
I am present and the meeting is visible and audible to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And Catherine Preston Connolly, are you present and is the meeting visible and audible to you?
I am present and it is visible and audible to me.
Thank you, Catherine. That's 7 members present, which constitutes a quorum.
Thank you so much. All right, the first item is an update from Community Development Department. Yes?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Iram Farouk, Assistant City Manager for Community Development. In terms of our updates today, tonight's meeting includes 2 public hearings. One is on the second hearing for MIT's master plan for the Volpe site. And this is the second PUD hearing. And then there is a continued hearing for 95 First Street, which is a retail cannabis location. In general business, there will also be discussion of a BZA case at the related to 364 R 3rd Street, which is related to relocation of the gas transfer station on 3rd Street. And then in upcoming matters, next week, there will not be a planning board meeting. The next meeting will be on, I apologize. Next week, we do have a meeting.
Nope.
No, we don't. Sorry,
No,
we don't have a meeting. I apologize, I got confused. We don't have a meeting next week. The next meeting will be August 3rd, when we have 2 public hearings, 600 Mass Ave and 698 Mass Ave, both of which are continued special permit hearings. And then following that on August 10th, the board will have a public hearing on 1043, 1059 Cambridge Street, which is an amendment to a special permit. So those are the things coming up at Planning Board. In terms of other items of interest at City Council, there is a meeting on July 21st, which is tomorrow at 2 p.m., which is a joint meeting of the Council's Public Safety Committee and the Economic Development Committee to look into cannabis cooperatives. And then on the 28th of July at 5:30, the Ordinance Committee will hold their hearing on the zoning amendments to Article 22, which is the green building section of the zoning ordinance. This is a petition that the board did hear, and we are currently finalizing the board's report to the City Council. So with that, I am going to turn it back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the second public hearing on case PB 368, planned unit development proposal by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology for mixed-use development on the site known as the Volpe Exchange Parcel. And we will start with CDD staff summarizing why this is before us.
Thank you, Catherine. This is the second of 2 required public hearings for this PUD special permit application. The first hearing was on April 6, 2021. And after that hearing, the board voted to make a positive preliminary determination on the development proposal after finding that it is in general conformance with the zoning and planning for the area. And the board provided a list of questions and comments to be addressed in the final development plan. Since that time, MIT has submitted a final development plan, including additional information and responses to some of the questions and issues raised in the preliminary determination. The board's task now is to review the final development plan materials and determine whether it remains in conformance with the area planning and zoning, and if it is responsive to the requests in the preliminary determination in order to grant the PUD special permit. The board must also consider the criteria in section 19.20 of the zoning ordinance in order to grant a project review special permit. The criteria are included in our staff memo, along with other comments on the new materials. And just as a note, in the memo, we tried to provide suggestions about what could be included in the PUD special permit conditions if the board decides to grant the special permit. Like other PUD special permits, the board would approve development as a multi-site, long-term phase development where each site would be subject to individual design review and approval by the board. The conditions of the special permit control the process by which different parts of the site will be designed, approved, and built over time, as well as how the site will be amended over time. So staff's memo also includes a full draft set of conditions using the template of similar PUD special permits that the board has granted in the past. And these conditions will be subject to revision before being finalized and filed, but we thought it would be helpful to include those in case there are any questions or issues that need to be discussed before making a decision. So I'll stop there and turn it back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And we will move to the presenter. And I believe we're starting with Sarah Gallup on behalf of the applicant. As usual, we've allocated 30 minutes. To the extent you can be brief and address the matters raised before, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll just pull up our presentation, and we have worked to try to keep the presentation brief. So that has been our goal, and our dry runs have gone pretty well. So good evening, members of the planning board, city staff, and members of the public. I'm Sarah Gallup in Government and Community Relations at MIT. The Volpe project team has been working closely with city staff to respond to the observations and comments provided by the board at our April hearing. We believe that the configuration and public realm enhancements that we've made have resulted in an improved plan. Also, we're going to show you a higher level of operational and logistical detail tonight that we think will give you a stronger sense of the desired look and feel of the proposed development. Next slide. Tonight, we plan to touch briefly on familiar background and then focus on the changes that we've made. Here's our proposed agenda with various members of the Volpe team presenting, of course, along with Gary Hildebrand from Reed Hildebrand and David Manfredi from Elkis Manfredi. We'll introduce ourselves as we go along for the record. Next slide. I love this slide because it succinctly and colorfully depicts our collective body of work. And I mean our. You'll recognize every step of the 10-year process because you were deeply involved in it. You can read the familiar milestones between 2011 and today, and I'll just provide a quick overview. The analysis of the Volpe parcel began 6 years before MIT was selected by the federal government as the developer. The foundational principles for the parcel were established over that period as a result of the K2 study, the city's zoning process, and the Volpe Working Group's development of planning and design guidelines. As participants in all those efforts, we benefited greatly from the community-based exploration of what we all wanted for the parcel. Then we were hip to hip with you during the 2017 zoning process, which was successful because it reflected the previous year's analysis and discussion. While we felt we had a strong sense of the direction of the parcel as we moved into the Article 19 process, we also felt deeply pulled by another set of forces: how to make the development as equitable and inclusive as it could possibly be. This desire led to our unique equity and inclusion process with 7 workshops focused on the community center, retail, employment, open space, and housing. 500 members of the Cambridge community helped us to understand what we could do at the site in order to achieve our objectives. Nearly every element of our plan was touched by this equity and inclusion process, and the results are manifested in open space details, operational and logistical practices, and our retail development planning process. You'll recall that when we were selected by the federal government with our $750 million bid, our responsibility was to build a new Volpe transportation headquarters on 4 acres, and then provide the balance of the bid to the government for the purchase of the other 10 acres. We're about halfway through the construction of the transportation building, and when it's occupied, we'll assume ownership of the remaining land. In preparation for that transfer in 2024, we hope to begin the formal design review process with you in 2022. In that way, we can align the start of construction with the conveyance of the land. So that's our 10 years and beyond. Whew, good work, everyone. Next slide. Since we were last with you in April, MIT unveiled a new, ambitious plan to tackle the climate crisis. The document, entitled Fast Forward, MIT's Climate Action Plan for the Decade, commits the Institute to net zero emissions by 2026 and creates a roadmap to marshal all of MIT's capabilities towards decarbonization. Tom Sinevich, you consistently share your observation that MIT should be leading and modeling for others in many regards, including in the area of climate science and action. We believe that we are meeting your expectations with this new initiative. The campus-wide plan, which is detailed in MIT's climate portal, calls out the Volpe project as a critical step towards a carbon-neutral investment portfolio. Beyond installing a state-of-the-art wastewater recycling system, the largest urban system in the Northeast, and raising the entire site to the projected 2070 100-year flood elevation, we are committed to achieving a carbon-neutral Volpe by offsetting the embodied and operational carbon footprint of the project. Then, by recycling demolition waste, designing all electrical residential buildings to eliminate on-site fossil fuels, significantly reducing commercial building energy, and optimizing for embodied energy of building construction components, Volpe is prepared to offset all remaining emissions. Atelier 10 presented our Volpe sustainability plan at our April hearing, and the details of our carbon commitments are included in our most recent submission. Now, I'd like to turn it over to Anthony Galluccio, who will review the mix of uses and community benefits of the project. Anthony?
Thank you, Sarah. First, thank you, Sarah, for your passion, particularly around community engagement. And it was awesome working with you on the race equity inclusion process. And again, thank you. Also, thanks for reminding us of this 10-year anniversary of Volpe. It aligns with the 10 years of work around mix of uses in Kendall, starting with the K2C2 planning study. It's exciting because I think the Volpe project represents the culmination of that mixed-use vision. And you can look around outside the Volpe lines to see the work that we did, particularly around PUD 5, to add grad housing and market and affordable housing and awesome retail, including the market, all happening as we begin this Volpe build out, hopefully starting tonight. I look back at Kendall Square. I think about being in high school, going down to Kendall Square to visit Stride Right as part of the Junior Achievement Program. And back then it was just a couple office buildings, no housing, no life sciences. And think about how far we've come. And now tonight, as you look, and I'll talk about the phasing plan, you look at the major influences of market housing and affordable housing. The community center that was pushed by the community, which will include the Job Connector, which is already opened. Obviously, life sciences research that helps drive these projects, and the influence by the community on open spaces and ground floor retail, all part of that movement for a mix of uses, which came out of the K2 C2 study, and Aram should be very proud tonight. I have to stop and pause and recognize the community benefits. You all know the road to this point and all the influences that come in, particularly because some of these community benefits, I think, have been forgotten about. The Grand Junction multi-use path, that contribution, the new transit fund. I've mentioned the community center, which you'll see more of tonight. The Job Connector, the affordable housing, which totals 140 million in value, and the grad student housing. All these community benefits add up to $230 million. And I think you'll all remember this was a tax exempt site. So $23 million annually when this is built out in new taxes to the city, and imagine what can be done with that money. I do want to hit on the community center. I want to thank Lou for prodding this issue at the last hearing appropriately. MIT obviously was very committed to this community center as an anchor to bring people together from all demographics. And Lou asked some challenging questions, and it forced us to go back and look at the short and long-term plan. And in doing that, we've increased our endowment from 3.5 to 10 million. We think that will give a real stable operating budget to provide both free and paid programming and have the balance in membership that we've talked about. Obviously, that's on top of a $22 million approximate expenditure for a 25,000 square foot community center. And the community process reinforced the vision of both recreation, employment, and job mentoring all under one roof. So thank you, Lou, for pushing us. We think that additional $6.5 million will go a long way in stabilizing the programming. Phasing. Obviously, once folks become excited about this, the question is, when do we get the good stuff? The community pushed us on the open space at the corner. And Michael will talk more about how we've been able to expand that and the community center park. Getting that first residential building going early. So getting the open spaces, the community center going in phase one, obviously along with 2 research buildings, which are critical to funding this. I think Sarah did a nice job, high level job of articulating the costs and the expenditures. The other phases, as you see, those build out according to that mixed use vision and have a nice balance of residential, commercial, and open space as we build out the project. I'd like to turn it over to Michael now. Michael has some updates on open space and also some further detail on the site plan. At this time, I'd like to introduce Project Manager Michael Lowell.
Thank you, Anthony. Since the last hearing, we have made several modifications to the site plan in response to both staff and planning board feedback. Specifically, at the last hearing, you challenged us to look a little deeper at the open space plan, particularly the 3rd Street Park. So we asked David to create a bigger setback along the east edge of C1. He was able to accomplish this by shifting 5th Street and C1 to the west and reducing the building footprint. The reduction in footprint and GFA of C1 also allowed us to create some height diversity with the commercial buildings that David will describe later. These changes came out of your request for us to look at spatial issues, and we think it's a great improvement. The change does reduce the width of 5th Street a bit, but we think this new alignment is appropriate and still makes way for a really vibrant corridor with great pedestrian and bike access. The realignment of the paths creates more space in the center of the park, and later Gary will provide more detail on how we can better utilize this space. It also allows us to create a buffer on 3rd Street, a concern that Ted and Mary raised at the April hearing. We are really excited about our retail areas and the opportunity to have them spill out and activate the adjacent open spaces. The layout of the new 3rd Street Park provides space for retail spillover along the east side of C1, which we think is critical. The shift in 5th Street also allowed us to enlarge the community center park. And finally, the redesign of 3rd Street Park enables us to preserve additional trees within the site along Broadway. We are designing 3rd Street Park to be really flexible space. You could have games, or you could have set weekend activities with different themes that bring people together. We want it to be a flexible park that can change on weekdays and weekends. We are really excited about the opportunity to accommodate a range of programmed and unprogrammed activities. And Gary will show you some examples in a couple of minutes. When we presented the 6th Street Park in April, we didn't give a good perspective of what could happen in this space. You'll notice all of our open spaces are different. While 3rd Street Park is a bigger connected space, 6th Street is more of a linear park. Its shape and location give us the chance to provide some of the smaller activities and uses that the community asked us for. These include a basketball court, a tot lot, flexible outdoor space, and a dog park, the diversity of uses that the community desires. The park expands on the popular Lowry Walkway, turning a path into a more usable public space. We're excited about the Biddy Street Pocket Park because after hearing your comments, we realized that this was a different space, not just because it's smaller, but because it's the one space that really connects to the traditional East Cambridge neighborhood. In our extensive engagement process, we heard from the community that they wanted us to make the Volpe development welcoming to families, which is a goal that we share. So we thought this would be a perfect place for a small family playground really focused on children. This playground would also be inviting and welcoming to families from the East Cambridge community, and we think it's going to work really well. Since our initial development proposal, the community center park has grown in scale and significance. When we responded to the community concern about open space by moving the community center into R1, we were able to create more park space here. We saw that in our first hearing in April, and it was very well received. With the shift of 5th Street to the west, the park has gotten even bigger, creating more opportunities for a range of activities within the park. Go back one slide. We have now created real open space connected to the community center with a better relationship to the larger 3rd Street Park. The reconfigured park also creates opportunities for interaction between the community center and the retail pavilion. We have learned a lot about how to bring people together, not just with our annual Volpe block parties, but with all the work that MIT does throughout the year. As you know, we have hired dedicated staff to program the Kendall open space. And this fall, we will start ramping up active programming as the campus reopens. And we look forward to building on that foundation at the Volpe site in the future. I'll now turn it over to Gary, who will describe some of the open spaces and how they work together. Gary?
Thank you, Michael. Good evening, everyone. Great to be here. As Michael has just noted, each of these parks is different. And you asked us to give greater specificity on park uses and their carrying capacity. This graphic shows how the entire public realm, including the parks and the streets, can perform as networked open spaces for larger interconnected events. You can have the Rib Fest and a food truck festival enlivening Broad Canal Way, anchored with music at the entertainment venue, indoor and outdoors, along with sporting events on Kendall Way and the 3rd Street Park. These are examples of themed programming that show how we can really be able to, on weekends and night times, make these places come alive beyond their normal daily activation. So it's a rare chance, because we control the street, to keep traffic out and flood the street with people and events. We want to thank you for pushing us on uses and dimensions, especially of the 3rd Street Park. As Michael has said, Ted and others specifically asked about a kind of safety setback from traffic on 3rd Street, which we've added. We like this park even more with the revised setbacks, both east and west. And it also provides for a larger occupiable center and a reduction in hard paving. It's become greener and more open, more expansive and flexible, and more protected. So now we can have a mini soccer tournament, as illustrated here. Or there is winter here still. We can have an ice fest in the park. And again, a multi-stage music festival, taking advantage of the additional space that we've gained to the east and the west. You've asked us to consider how many people can the parks hold. These images show approximations of the numbers of people that could linger here during the average weekday or during events. We may have underemphasized this a little bit at our preliminary hearing. The numbers of folks that could dine outside, we think that is approaching 250 people. We imagine 1,000 people on a movie night. And for Jazz Fest, we think we can get about 3,000 people solely on the eastern portion of this site. Tom and Lou rightly asked questions at our previous hearing about the removal of a substantial number of existing trees at the site and whether we could save more trees. So we did engage a second specialist consulting arborist to evaluate the earlier work. They confirmed both the methods of study and the recommendations. Volpe trees are declining, and nobody likes tree removal, but we are committing to preserving more trees. The enlargement of the park has allowed us to keep 3 more. And in design review, we will make every effort in working with public works staff to transplant a greater number of them. Altogether, we propose to plant more than 220 trees in the project area and its adjoining rights of way. And I should mention here that our current US DOT project adds another 151 trees already bought out for the project for the DOT, bringing our total planting numbers to more than 370 new trees over the entire 14 acres. We're dramatically increasing species diversity on the site and improving resiliency in line with current guidance from the Cambridge Urban Forest Master Plan. We're also working directly with the city on a fund for planting on private lands. That's a game changer for Cambridge. And we're working in collaboration with the DCR for planting additional trees on Memorial Drive. We have a robust plan in place overall that'll make for a lasting and high-performing canopy in the heart of Kendall Square. And as we've stated previously, we are greatly increasing species diversity, going from just 5 species to more than a dozen carefully selected species, all with far greater resiliency, especially as it relates to climate change. With respect to ecosystem services that are provided by these trees, we've demonstrated that by year 10 of the build-out, we'll exceed the measurable values for carbon sequestration, for stormwater management, and for the benefits of air quality that are currently produced by the tree canopy. That will increase, not decrease, for generations to come. And finally, this last slide on trees demonstrates anticipated growth rates in a maturing canopy over a 10-year period, and then again over a 25-year period. We're starting with 4 and 6 and 8-inch caliper trees at the outset, which is larger than many projects in the city. And we're committing to install the necessary life support and the tree population required to make happen what we all want to see here at Volpe, a thriving tree canopy in the middle of Kendall Square, producing real environmental benefits and adding to the quality of life in the city. Now I'll turn it over to David to walk through massing and other architectural issues.
Thank you, Gary. Good evening, everyone. Good to be here again. Before addressing specific opportunities for diversity in massing, materials, and architecture across this entire site, I want to quickly remind the board of the key planning principles that shape this site plan. Number one, the connection of 5th Street through the site from Biddy to Broadway. Number two, the network of open spaces that Gary just described that includes community input about the location of our biggest, most important civic space at 3rd and Broadway. Number three, the balance of residential and commercial program, 4 residential buildings, 4 commercial buildings. And number four, the continuation of Broad Canal Way across 3rd Street as the retail, dining, and entertainment destination for the neighborhood. At our last meeting, the planning board asked specifically for several additional studies of Broadway and the commercial buildings on Broadway to ensure that there is flexibility for distinctive architecture. And you asked for additional studies of Broad Canal Way. Our design guidelines describe a 4-part urban street wall, with the parts being pedestrian frontage at grade, the street wall, the tower, and the building top. There are also guidelines about horizontal step backs between each of these parts. Shown here are a series of massing variations, and obviously there could be many more, that comply with the guidelines, that achieve the density that is entitled, but that also provide variety in height, that allow future design architects the freedom to deliver distinctive architecture for all buildings. There was specific interest from a number of planning board members, but especially from Tom, about commercial buildings on Broadway. Remember, these are not building proposals, but simply a demonstration of how diversity can be achieved. There are 2 views here, one on the screen now from the east at 3rd Broadway, and one I'll show in a moment from the west in front of the Residence Inn. Together, they demonstrate how these 3 commercial buildings, what we call C1, C2, and C3 along Broadway, that are in fact similar in size, can be different in massing, materials, color, fenestration, and how they create identity on the skyline. The second view from the west, similarly, the massing, the materials, the tops will separate the buildings, allowing for that distinct identity. At our last meeting, Steve and Mary expressed concern with the distance between buildings, especially at Broad Canal Way. Washington Street in Downtown Crossing in Boston is an excellent analogy. In fact, it's incredibly comparable in that it is 55 feet wide, just like we are proposing Broad Canal Way. It is mostly pedestrian, with a consistent street wall ranging from 35 feet to 130 feet, and adjacent towers as high as 685 feet. The intimacy of Broad Canal Way, as shown in this street section, is really, we think, very important to the envisioned pedestrian character, to the step backs that are important for access to daylight. Our proposal for Broad Canal Way is 55 feet at street level. It increases to 75 feet in some places, and in fact, in the middle of Broad Canal Way to over 100 feet, where the towers between commercial and residential buildings step back off of Broad Canal Way. The design guidelines include a build-to diagram that you've seen many times that's shown here on the left. Again, in collaboration with CDD, we're proposing to add an alternative diagram that would allow Broad Canal Way, the street alignment, an alternative street alignment, to shift in response to future planning development of the MXD district, still maintaining the entertainment venue as a magnet at the end of Broad Canal Way. I do, however, want to emphasize that I believe in the proposed alignment, the alignment on the west, that it provides connection, and it provides a very strong visual anchor that will drive pedestrian traffic and create the kind of activity on the entire length of Broad Canal Way, which is our objective. In addition, we've added another variation to the massing alternatives for R1. Remember, R1 is the building at Broad Canal Way and 3rd Street. And the alternative is intended to give the architects the latitude to consider the final relationship of R1 and C1 on on Broadway, and the relationship of Community Center Park and 3rd Street Park. And this alternative is shown here as variation 1. Another change to the block diagrams recommended by CDD is at block R2, which is Potter and 5th Street. And this provides for a taller street wall zone matching the street wall at C2 opposite on Broad Canal Way. And this is shown here as variation 1. As we continue to refine our strategy around resiliency, we've made our porches on Broadway, which are 2 or 3 risers above the sidewalk, continuous on C2 and C3, as you see in the lower diagram. And this protects all retail locations on Broadway. Our typical finished floor elevations for all buildings is 21.4 feet. And finally, I want to address questions about Broadway at street level. We envision a complete street section with bikes, landscape zone, sidewalk, slightly raised front porch that accommodates our finished floor elevation, and that will provide that long-term solution for resiliency on the site. With that, let's return to Michael Lowell.
Thanks, David. At the last hearing, Lou asked about loading. We agree that it would be nice to put the loading below grade. But as you know, it gets really challenging given the number of buildings, the location spread across a large area, and the restrictions on providing ramps on the public streets. It's further complicated by the impact truck ramps would have on the open space and stormwater infiltration areas, and our ability to deliver the 3rd Street Park in the first phase of development. So instead, we focus on mitigating the impacts of trucks on the site by minimizing conflict areas in the center of the development. We located loading bays as close to the perimeter of the blocks as possible, as shown in this diagram. We designed the traffic circulation pattern on Campbell Way and Broad Canal Way to prevent cut-through truck traffic, and provided an appropriate number of fully enclosed loading bays to minimize the chance of trucks idling in the pedestrian zones. And finally, we will submit for city review a loading dock management plan for every building in the development. The board and staff also asked about how the on-street parking spaces will be used. We started out with 82 spaces and removed 55, mostly to accommodate separated bike tracks on Potter Street and 5th Street. We anticipate almost half of the remaining 27 spaces will be active curb spaces used for drop-off and pickup. The rest will be short-term parking, including handicap accessible spaces. The board had questions about the role of the entertainment venue. We made the decision to invest in this space to serve as a draw to the western portion of the site, as David described. 3rd Street and Broadway are existing corridors, and the planning board and city staff have done a great job of working with property owners to activate those edges to the extent possible. And we are doing our part on the other side of 3rd Street, along the existing Broad Canal Way, and of course, on Main Street as well. Just as the Broad Canal serves as an anchor at the east end of Broad Canal Way, we see the entertainment venue as a critical anchor at the west end of the development to draw the public into the site. It has the potential to activate the passageway between C3 and R3, which will be open at all times for people moving in an east-west direction. With the ability to limit vehicular traffic, we believe this corner will be an amazing location anchored by the entertainment venue and supported by the adjacent retail and active uses. We envision the space being able to support live music events, as well as other activities during the day, including public and community events like the Volpe Block Party and other site-wide festivals. Our plan is to work with a private operator who understands the Cambridge and Kettle Square communities and knows how to bring great programs to the venue. I'll now turn it over to Kristen, who will walk us through some of our plans for retail activation.
Thank you, Michael, and good evening, everyone. I'm really happy to be here again tonight. We have thought critically about the possible mix of retail and active uses that will best serve the community, complement the surrounding retail market, and tee up our future retailers for success. This merchandising plan is illustrative at this point and will go through many, many iterations over time between now and when the spaces are being marketed. Our leasing strategy will be guided by our advisory committee that is required by our zoning, as well as continued work with the community to ensure that we are achieving our equity and inclusion goals. It is difficult to imagine this magnitude of investment in retail coming off of the last 15 months, but we remain optimistic, bullish even, on the future of retail. Here we see lively retail along the east side of C1 that was made possible by the shift to 5th Street and the reduction of the C1 footprint. This active retail zone allows for spill out dining and merchandising and complements the programming and activity at the 3rd Street Park. By extending Broad Canal Way and adding the entertainment venue at the western end, we are able to build upon the successful retail corridor east of 3rd Street that is anchored by the kayak launch. Our new retail spaces on Broad Canal Way at 1 Broadway are filling up as our residential building is rising up, creating a compelling live, work, play zone that you all helped us plan. There were comments from the planning board and staff about the role and importance of the retail pavilions that I'd like to provide a little more detail on. This photo is a great example of a pavilion that lands lightly in its environment because of its transparency and becomes an enhancement to its surroundings. Customers can readily see what is going on inside, while the size provides a perfect opportunity for incubation and pop-up retail that our community entrepreneurs are looking for. The permanence of the structure allows for more comfortable and efficient operations, so the tenants can then concentrate on doing business. One can imagine the pavilions housing a coffee shop, a small diner, ice cream or other snacks, a florist, or even a throwback newsstand. This rendering brings all of the elements of Broad Canal Way together, creating a lively retail corridor that favors pedestrians and cyclists over cars, where restaurants spill out onto the sidewalk and residents and visitors can enjoy the parks and gather with friends. We've talked a lot about extending Broad Canal Way with retail, but we also see this as an amazing opportunity to honor the canal by introducing a water feature along the street's edge. And although we will need some guidance and help as this takes shape along the way, we love the idea of surprise and delight, something fun to bring folks into the site and along the length of Broad Canal Way. Now I'd like to bring back Sarah Gallup.
Thank you, Kristen. As a closing feature, we'd like to show you a short video that we created to try to capture the look and feel of the project. It's one of those 24-hour day in the life kind of films that depicts what people might experience within the development. It moves quickly, so we would be happy to show it twice if that would be helpful, and that's why we decided to send it to you in advance. You should recognize some familiar faces in it because the video includes lots of folks from our equity and inclusion engagement process. We think it speaks for itself and gives us all a sense of what can be, what will be at the Volpe parcel. Please run the video.
Cambridge, there's a lot of different groups and there's a lot of diversity.
I'm running to the coffee kiosk and then I gotta head on the red line. What are you up to this morning?
I'm on my way right now to the community center for a mentoring meeting, so have a good day.
You too.
We need to showcase those cultures within the community center.
I hope this new community center is very representative of all that we stand for as a city, and everybody really feels comfortable going here.
We need to make it direct more towards what you want to do, since the Job Connector has some great partners and mentors and jobs. So we really need to focus on your goal.
We're ensuring that we have very strong connectivity to all of the neighborhoods.
I think it just has to be a variety because different groups of people are going to be attracted to different things.
This is a wonderful opportunity to actually elevate Black and brown businesses.
The diversity of the retail stores in their environment of that space just needs to be right.
So making sure that this space has a an inviting architecture and doesn't have those physical barriers that we see at a lot of other institutions.
Next week, meet me at the Job Connector bar.
We wanted to make sure that it's open for all the neighbors.
I think this is a great opportunity for placekeeping. This is a great opportunity to bring people together, to think of the Volpe Center being this community space, to think of an opportunity like this where the businesses get to reflect the community.
Hey, that was a great coffee.
Yeah, let's get something to eat. I really want Broadway burritos.
I really want seafood, but I don't know, there's so many options.
We have the people, the businesses are right here in Cambridge that could build this foundation.
So that concludes our presentation. We went through that video really fast. There's a lot of stuff in there. We really try to pack it in. Happy to show it again. We also have some stills that we took from the film if you want to focus on a particular spot in the movie. But with that, I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you very much. So as is our custom, we will move first to public comment, as this is a public hearing. Any members of the public who wish to speak should now click the button that says raise hand. And if you're calling in by phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. As of 5 p.m. yesterday, the board had received written comments from the Cambridge Redevelopment Authority, and written communications received after 5 p.m. yesterday will be entered into the record. I will ask staff to unmute speakers one at a time. You should begin by saying your name and address, and staff will confirm that we can hear you. And after that, you'll have up to 3 minutes to speak before I ask you to wrap up.
Thank you, Catherine. It looks like our first speaker is Lauren Crow, followed by Suzanne Blier. Lauren, please begin by giving your name and address.
Hi, thank you. My name is Lauren Crow. I live at 8 Museum Way. I support the project. I supported it before. I think the changes are great as presented. I'm actually excited about this. If we can pull this off, this is going to be a game changer for not just Kendall Square, but all the neighborhoods that touch it, I think. This has been one of the most holistic, authentic, and thoughtful community processes the city's ever seen. The needs of many stakeholders, including people and communities that are never reached by normal neighborhood groups you always hear from, have been a part of this. We desperately need the housing, both the affordable and the market rate. The transportation plan's solid. The tree plan's going to leave the city better than it is today, and I think should alleviate the concerns of many people in the community. And the community space is amazing. So let's do it, and thanks to Matimco.
Thank you. The next speaker is Suzanne Blier, followed by Tyrone Biddy. Suzanne, please begin by giving your name and address.
Thank you. Suzanne Blier, 5 Fuller Place. And I have 2 key points on this. One has to do with retail. And as one of the authors of the Harvard Square zoning petition, it's critically important to find ways to promote local businesses, and want to know if there's a commitment to having 70% local in those who would be going into these business places. And are there specific things that can be done to support that, such as limiting the facade length and limiting the interior space? This is really critical for local businesses in Cambridge going forward. I also, in relationship to this, wonder whether MIT would be willing to offer free classes to people within the diverse community that you are supporting here. Thirdly, and equally importantly, I think that the trees are a vital issue. I support many of the things in the East Cambridge Planning Team letter. I think it is a huge problem to be removing mature trees. You simply can't add up the trunk size of new trees to be anywhere near what the cover would be for the branching structure of mature trees. Diversity or no diversity, this is a massive loss, particularly from the vantage point of heat islands. And I was at the meeting last week where the planning board, and I was at the BZA meeting, where the planning board and BZA said that they had no authority over making that decision, but here you do. We're really at a crisis point for heat, for climate, and commercial developments such as this, it's a massive development, should require their architects to move around the trees in their design. That's what architects do. And I would also, as in the CHC, ask for more complete renderings of the buildings that are proposed to go there. This is really a massive project. Thank you so much. And you need those design criteria early on.
Thank you. The next speaker is Tyrone Biddy, followed by Jason Alves. Tyrone, please begin by giving your name and address.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ty Biddy. I am at Bigelow Street in Cambridge, and I'm calling in support of the Volpe project. And I'm speaking from a lens of someone who's been close to the process in the last 12 months. And I think the video did a great job of highlighting on many fronts just the importance of the housing, the retail, the restaurant space, the community center, the job connector, which I am the co-president of My Brother's Keeper here in Cambridge, and we're working closely with them this summer on a summer empowerment program, working with the youth in Cambridge, and from the open space, which is super conducive to building community, and that's what the Volpe project is. It's a vehicle for creating community. From the theater and then the community engagement piece was so important as we walked through these experiences with the Matimco team, who were really, really dedicated to the diversity, equity, inclusion process. I go to a lot of meetings, and we talk about DEI all over the place, not just here in Cambridge, but all over the place. And these were the most diverse meetings I've ever attended that didn't include just, me in my personal home with my friends. The most diverse in age and race and gender. The Volpe team are truly committed to making sure that they create a space that can stitch the Port, the Harrington Wellington community together in a way that makes everyone feel drawn to it. This weekend, I spent some time over in the Seaport with my wife. And as we walked around, we noticed beer gardens, restaurants, folks engaged in picnics, smiles everywhere. And as we came over the Longfellow Bridge and we looked at Brothers Market, and I looked at the corner there and I said, I can't wait to do this here in our community, in our city. I want to spend my dollars here. I want to meet people here. I want to build community or continue to build community here. And I think the video gave us a great insight as to what the Volpe project can do for the city of Cambridge. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jason Alves, followed by a phone number ending in 8311. Jason, please unmute yourself and begin by giving your name and address.
Hi, this is Jason Alves. I'm the Executive Director of the East Cambridge Business Association at 544 Cambridge Street. Just wanted to offer my support for the project. I grew up in the area, and I'm a pretty big proponent of all the the positive things that Kendall Square brings to Cambridge in general. But for all the good things, there still seems to be this. It remains a little unapproachable at times, and I think this project, the Volpe, everything about it is going to finally crack that nut of why people are going to go to Kendall, hang out in Kendall, and it's creating a different way to experience Kendall, from the first floor retail to the way that the parks integrate with them, the way that they've thought about the broad canal and how it cuts across the street, and there's been a lot of thought into how people are going to really stay and experience Kendall in a different way. I had the opportunity to participate in the equity and inclusion conversations about retail, and I think all of those meetings that they had really informed this project and how they envision this happening as Kendall gets built out, and everything about this is just great. So just wanted to take a minute, offer my support, and thank you all for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker is a phone number ending in 8311. Please unmute yourself and begin. And the next speaker is Luke Smith.
Hi, Heather Hoffman, 213 Hurley Street. And I was intrigued by the specific mention of embodied carbon and also by the references to K2, because this plan completely blows away one of the very important things in K2 that was a reiteration of ECAPs, and that is the 7.5 acre park that we were promised. I will remind you that the K2 study group had 2 MIT representatives on it, so it is not possible that MIT was unaware that K2 said this. That being said, I think that they have worked to try to make the piddling amount of open green space that they're offering look more like a 7.5 acre park than it did. And I appreciate that. But cutting down a whole ton of trees is not saving the embedded carbon. So I hope that there will be a whole ton of thinking about these things before you go forward, because these are not niggly matters. They're tremendously important. Another thing that I hope you will think about and address specifically is for the affordable housing to have affordable restaurants and other retail to go to. It does very little to invite people who don't have a whole lot if what they have available to them is places where, you know, if you got 25, 30 bucks, you can go in there, but not if you have 5. So those are things that I think matter a whole ton in fulfilling the promise that I think MIT wants us to believe this has. And as to the community center and the other things that are supposed to be bringing in people from the surrounding neighborhoods, I hope that you are as successful as you want us to believe that you will be, because I think that could make up for a whole lot of other things. I really, really hope that my neighbors and I will be welcome there, and that we will know that we're welcome there. So save the trees. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Luke Smith, followed by Mary Bain Campbell. Luke, please begin by unmuting yourself. Oh, I'm sorry. It looks like Luke might have just dropped off the meeting. So we'll go to the next speaker momentarily. So the next speaker is Mary Bain Campbell. Mary, please begin by unmuting yourself and giving your name and address.
Hi, my name is Mary Bain Campbell, and I live at 36 Linnean Street, near Porter Square. So I know this is not my neighborhood, but I care a great deal about the terrible gentrification of Cambridge since shortly after I moved here. And so I've been following the Volpe project, and I was there at the meeting in which the City Council voted to give it to the MIT related site. I listened to many dozens of people from East Cambridge pleading, sometimes in tears, that it not happen, that some of the concerns that the previous speaker uttered were very, very strongly reflected in their testimony. They did not want to be chased out by gentrification of their world. They did not want to be invited into a world they couldn't afford to participate in. I didn't see any particular signs, frankly, except for the community center, that really poignant meeting has been remembered by anyone who's currently on the committee involved in setting up this project. But my most urgent concern as an environmentalist and someone who teaches environmental studies is the fact that we've lost 22% of the Cambridge canopy in the last few years. And we're talking about losing 132 mature trees to the Volpe site at MIT, in addition to the 157 mature trees at Jefferson Park, the 113 at the Tobin School, the 17 at the Walden Square. And these are just in most of these are just in my immediate neighborhood. Mature trees take 50 years to develop the kind of canopy and the kind of powers that they have as infrastructure in a city undergoing climate change. And the language that I keep running up against and run up against too in the materials for this meeting about numbers of trees, they don't matter. And neither, if you add all the diameters of those trees, does that matter. What matters is canopy, first and most importantly, as infrastructure. And second, what matters is their ability to soak up runoff waters. And as far as I can see, the argument that these trees are 50 years old and therefore it's okay to slaughter them because in another 50 years they'll be old. Although I know my trees, and my partner is a forest ecologist. I know several oak trees and so on, trees of the kind that we have that are several hundred years old. But even so, we have 4 years, according to James Hansen, and we have 8 years, according to the IPCC, to prevent a disaster for our children and grandchildren, and for us, frankly, because it's moving very, very fast, that is almost indescribable. We have a very, very, very few years. Those trees are not going to be bigger as we reach the rest of the tipping points in those next few years. So I think this is a major concern, and I agree with Suzanne Gouillet about that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It looks like Luke Smith has rejoined. So the next speaker is Luke Smith, followed by Charles Hines. Luke, please begin by unmuting yourself and giving your name and address. It looks like Luke Smith is still muted. Oh, and Luke Smith has dropped off again, so we will keep moving along. The next speaker is Charles Hines, followed by Bjorn Poonen. Charles, please begin by giving your name and address.
Hi, my name is Charles Hines. I live at 207.5 Charles Street, East Cambridge. I'm the current president of the East Cambridge planning team, and I'm here on their behalf as their president. We submitted a letter late this afternoon, and I'd like to, it's too long to go through right now, but I'd like the planning board to take a read. We have 4 different areas: the site and building plan, some traffic issues, open space issues, and trees. And first of all, I'd like to thank MIT for all the hard work that they've done over the years. I've been with this process since 2017. I got started with this. And every time I see this plan, it gets better and better. So I got to give kudos to the team. But I think you can do better, especially with the trees. I just want to read one paragraph out of a letter from the trees. Section 3.8.14 of the design guidelines specifically states special consideration should be given to preservation of existing large trees, including the relocation of healthy trees. The technology to move trees has been known in Cambridge for more than 50 years. And it was used when the Memorial Drive sycamores were moved in the 1960s. I have a quote, we must do everything to protect these now famous trees. I don't know if anybody knows who said that. That was said by 1964 Republican gubernatorial candidate John Volpe, the man for which the site is named. Now let's do justice to the memory of the Secretary of Transportation Volpe and save more of these old growth trees. I know 25 years from now, they'll have great canopy. It really takes 50 years, as previously mentioned by the last speaker, to have mature trees. I mean, I'm not going to be around to see it. I don't know if I'm going to be around 20 years to see it, but climate change is happening faster than we can handle, and we need to save more of these old growth trees. Now, we have oaks in East Cambridge that they're approaching 150 years old. The people have been saying they're on a decline for years, and they have great canopy, and they provide great shade. They help with mitigate the wind, sound, because of groundwater management. And trees make 25% of the oxygen on the earth. So next time you take a breath, let's think some of that might be from the Volpe trees. And I'd like to thank you. And that's it.
Thank you. The next speaker is Bjorn Poonen, followed by Jeannie Duan. Bjorn, please begin by giving your name and address.
Hello, I'm Bjorn Poonen at 303 3rd Street in Cambridge. I'm also concerned about the trees and the greenery in general. So I don't know what's possible as far as saving the trees or moving them, but it really is a huge loss. I mean, if you take a look at what the Volpe site looks like now, I mean, these are magnificent trees, and it's hard to imagine that they're all going to be gone and replaced by, lots of little tiny trees. The other comment I want to make is just about the open space in general. I understand that MIT is doing the best it can within the space that it's allotted for the open space, but it's such a small amount of space that it just feels very limiting. And even the space that is the open space that's there, is so much of it's, from looking at the video, it seems that so much of it is actually paved, like paved walkways, and it doesn't feel natural. I feel as if what Kendall Square really needs right now is an antidote to all the development that's been going on. We need more of it to be natural, actual green open space, not just open space, but green open space, and more and trees, and yeah. So that's the comment I want to make. I hope it's possible to do a little more. I certainly appreciate that the new plan is better than what we saw a few months ago, but I still feel as if there's more to do. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jeannie Duan, followed by Luke Smith. Jeannie, please begin by giving your name and address.
Hello, this is working. I'm hoping this is working. All right, cool.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Jeannie Duan. I'm here on representing as a co-founder of the Favor Continues. We're a street and club dance organization, community nonprofit. That street and club dance organization, community nonprofit that is currently operating in Kendall Square. There were a few concerns that I kind of wanted to list. One of them is, it seems like I missed all the DEI meetings, which I wasn't aware that there was any. So if there are any in the future, I would love to be included in those. But there was a couple concerns that I wanted to list, which is subsidizing for BIPOC run businesses, whether it's in retail or even potentially in the music and entertainment centers. For example, like if there is a art group that wants to go and perform in these entertainment places, would they be able to be subsidized for like the rental that may need to be paid there? Another concern that I had was more of a noise allowance, because there's been a lot of times where we will be operating somewhere, but for example, like we wouldn't be where we would be operating somewhere. But for example, like we wouldn't be able to play the music as loudly as we need to for the type of art that we would be doing. And I'm wondering if that was a concern that y'all had talked about. Another thing that I wanted to address is, as a street and club dance community, we have previously used MIT, specifically 50 Vassar building, a lot. We would operate in all the floors. Unfortunately, we were kicked out eventually. We were operating there, I believe, for like 17 years or so, but we were eventually kicked out because of the noise reaching out to those groups that were previously operating in those spaces for the community centers. And I think those were all the thoughts that I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Luke Smith, followed by Catherine Susie. Luke, please begin by giving your name and address. Oh, and we have lost Luke. Luke is having some challenges, so we're gonna move right along. The next speaker is Catherine Susie. Catherine, please begin by giving your name and address.
Hi, I'm Kathy Zusi. I live at 202 Hamilton Street. Dear Planning Board and MIT, I share the concerns of the Kendall Square Residents Association. I've always thought there was one too many buildings planned for this site. Population of 10,000 people, additional people to the site. There must be a place for them to go and to be outside, and ideally on occasion, that's in your hands. Please don't grant special permits tonight that will compromise our long-term community health.
Additional hands at this time, Catherine, but perhaps, we have a couple more. So the next speaker is Dennis.
Dennis Benson, 1 Pine Street in Cambridge. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Madam Chair, tenant with Matimco. So, a lot has been said tonight about the equity and inclusion piece. And I want to just say that I really include small businesses, particularly minority businesses, as part of this process. I'm currently a tenant with Matimco, and as you know, this pandemic has caused a great deal of pain and suffering for small businesses in our city and across the Commonwealth, as well as many employees and families. And, they have been very considerate of their tenants in this whole process. And the fact that they are really intentionally reaching out to minority businesses in our city says a lot about, who they are and who they're going to be and continue to be as they think about how they're going to permit small businesses to be part of this development. We're in a situation right now where our landlords, there's no chance that we're going to be able to start our businesses, but more importantly, thrive in our city. And so it's really important that we understand that, as we think about this process, that, we put jobs and people and the importance of giving space to minority businesses for center. People are struggling. And we need to put people first, and we need to put the creation of jobs first, the creation of for jobs. So I support this project, and I really hope that as you continue to think about open space and activity within the open space, that you look at like the project, and I hope that the project will continue to move forward.
Thank you. Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, hi, Mike Nakagawa, 51 Madison Avenue. This project covers a lot of ground. I guess literally some of the larger 6 and 8 inch trees, which is an important head start. Those trees have significantly more canopy than the standard 3 inch. I have a 40-inch Norway maple in my yard, a few feet from my house, that continues to provide significant cooling in the summer. And these older trees can survive if they're taken care of, and they can be even improved. They don't necessarily have to die. Maybe they haven't been properly taken care of. But killing many trees and replacing with small ones, that takes years to get that canopy growth, and it's been shown that continuous canopy coverage is where you get the best cooling, not just having trees sporadically put in that heat up in between because they haven't made that continuous coverage. My concern is that trees continue to be an afterthought, as we saw last week with the plan, but said people of color, like my family, would not be allowed on the property. Would you say that most of the plan is good, so necessarily taking away from all the rest of it? You have to consider trees are infrastructure. You are the planning board, and since nobody else in the city's the area until we can try to get some changes that will give other areas more attention to trees ahead of time.
Please begin by giving your name and address.
Good evening. I'm Robert Simhai, live at 303 3rd Street. I want to begin by saying that we are all delighted with the many improvements which have been proposed this evening, and we hope that that tradition will continue. We reviewed carefully the staff report and noticed that there are many issues which has 6 buildings on it, still leaves the question open as to whether if fewer buildings were built, more open space would be provided to enjoy with respect to open space. You are going to add, as has been said, 10,000 people to this site. Secondly, I want to emphasize that the concentration of off-street parking under this site with significant access with respect to that intersection. It is already at failure level, and the opportunity to do something else besides reconcentrating another 1,400 parking spaces at that location and all the delivery facilities and conflicts that will result on this private street really need to be carefully considered and readdressed. The most important thing, I think, is to continue to work on this, which we have raised. We want to continue that tradition, and there's plenty of time to do that. So please give us that opportunity. Thank you very much.
And we have lost Luke again. So Luke, perhaps when he rejoins, we can also advise if anyone is having technical difficulties with Zoom.
For speakers as well. So if there's anyone else who would like to speak, now would be the time to raise your hand using that raise hand button. Oh.
I don't know if we want to give Luke Smith one more bite at the apple. Oh, no, he dropped off again. Okay.
Okay. All right. So if there are no additional speakers, then we can close public comment for now. Wrap it up and move from public comment to board discussion.
Catherine, I do see, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Last call for anyone who has not yet been heard on this matter.
Thank you. So Manny, please begin by giving your name and address.
Hi guys, presentation. Love all the ideas that have been presented, not only in this meeting, but in previous meetings. Super excited for the project. Also self that Cambridge is providing with the help of MIT, obviously, for this project. So I'm speaking in full support of the project. I've been trying to the video was terrific as far as the rendering, and you guys have my full support. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we will now move from public comment to board discussion. If we do continue this matter to another public hearing, there will be another opportunity for public comment at that time. And of course, written comments may also be submitted. So I'll just note that we've received memos on this application from staff at CDD and from Traffic and Parking and from Department of Public Works, provided a memo at the previous hearing. They're really detailed memos. I think CDD's runs to 40 pages, including the draft conditions. I want to make sure that we're taking the time to address the issues that have been raised in them. A number of the CDD kind of bolded questions are things they'd specifically, frankly, look for guidance from us on that have been, presumably discussed with the applicant, and they need some guidance on. But if there are any questions the board members who've reviewed the materials have for either staff or for the applicant, now would be the time to start raising those. So who wants to kick us off with questions? Lou.
I have a pretty simple one. I
found it in two locations. It's about the parking and the parking rate that's being subsidized. Allows a 50% parking rate for commercial parking. Normally our TDMs are 100%, and I'd like to find out where that came from.
So I think, as we have done before, let's get all the questions out there and allow the applicant and frankly staff to organize their thoughts and respond to us as efficiently as possible. So we need so Lou, your first question is, where does that parking subsidy rate come from?
Correct. It's in 1391.4.
Okay. Hugh.
So yet another tree canopy question. The city's studying various changes to the tree protection ordinance. Is there any way to require that as each site plan gets presented to us instead of the 2021 regulations, which I think many of us feel are simply not adequate, state of the art?
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. All right, Steve?
Exactly what elements are being approved or might be approved today and locked in today, and what elements will be subject to review and approval and modification later. I can't imagine that most of the public really understands the distinction in that process. What's locked in today? What is still open for discussion and review later?
Okay. That's another good question. Lou, do you have another one?
More of a comment. I spent a lot of time in this block. And during that time, I've been looking at all of these trees, and I'll have to agree with MIT on the majority of the perimeter trees. They're in bad shape. They're intermingled with fences, utilities, and so forth. My concern really, and it's probably the hardest group of trees to address, are the large oak trees on the lawn area beside the existing Volpe tree, building. It seems like if any would to be moved, those would be the prime candidates. They're, of course, the largest on the site and the most difficult to move, but they seem to be in pretty good health. And I've looked at videos when they were planted that are available, and they've come a long way. It seems like possibly something could be done. They all seem to be under C3. It would be nice to be able to preserve some of these larger specimens.
Thanks, Lou. Tom?
Yes, sort of just building on the spirit of Hugh and Steve's comments about the future. And within the staff memo, I did note lots of advice, for instance, to do just that with the green regulations, that current regulations, whatever they stand as we go through each open space and each building and detailed design review would be recommended to be applied. And I take that, but also Steve's spirit about sort of the unknown future. What is it that we're sealing here? And led me to this thought. I think the process that MIT has gone through is really unprecedented in terms of the amount of reach out and the quality of that consideration. MIT specifically, I would want to know, does MIT have an idea about potentially selling off a parcel or all the parcels? Decisions tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Mary?
I just had a question about the phasing plan. Phase 2 includes C3 and residential 3. So basically after phase 2, we have the first residential building gap, and then the second and the third residential building. And so for a while, till we get to the final phase, there's kind of a hole in that whole broad Canal Way length, which seems unfortunate to me. So I would just like to know a little bit about how the decision of that, please.
Great. Thank you, Mary. Ted?
For the 3rd Street Park. But I remain of the opinion that the open space is still too small. And I would like to hear from MIT, whether they have pushed the envelope enough with regard to reconfiguring some of the buildings to actually provide more open space. I understand that we're not going to eliminate a building in its entirety, but have we pushed as high as they can go to perhaps provide more open space around the buildings and to enlarge the parks? And I'd also like to hear more. I think they take away from the actual open space and think that having greenery there and perhaps movable kiosks would be a better option. And even in the video, which is very nice, you suddenly see this fixed structure right next to open space when there is plenty of retail in the fixed buildings that are abutting the open spaces.
Okay, thanks, Ted. Lou?
I guess I might as well. I was going. I'm still a little hung up on the consolidated parking, the loading. I'd like to see some kind of. I haven't seen a drawing of that. I guess it's the south foundation that will be all contiguous. It seems like there's a trade-off here between, I don't know how many, 5 loading docks and 3 or 4 parking entrances. And to address the green side of the world, all of this roadway that's going to be used for basically deliveries seems like it would be able to lend itself more to a greener approach. I don't know if you can eliminate all the paving, but there are multiple loading docks, multiple entrances, multiple roads, and we're looking for green space. And I know the financial consideration, but if you trade one for the other, it seems like there may be a trade-off here. And obviously we've got no knowledge of the foundation plan or garage area. I would like to see some more information on that if we could.
Okay. Great. All right, I'm seeing no other board questions at the moment. So I will just add to that a very general question that I would love to hear from the applicant. The staff has taken the time to draft conditions for this as recommendations and on the draft conditions for the special permit. So it's quite a list. Sounds like capable experts there.
I have complete confidence in our capable experts, but I'm going to turn it over to Michael to facilitate.
Turn it over to others to fill in where I may have missed something. So let's see. So first, Lou, you asked about a 50% subsidy. So that's in the PTDM plan. So Stephanie Grohl, the PTDM officer, has approved our PTDM plan. The way it works is that we charge market rate for parking. So it's market rate that we're charging to the tenants. And then the options that you see in the PTDM plan are what the tenants do with their employees. And what Stephanie has approved is sort of a 3-tier structure that the the further away from market rate, the more additional things that the tenants have to do. And we're going to build that into our leases with every tenant in the building, and that carries through the entire development. So that's where that comes from. Let's see, Hugh, I didn't quite understand your question about the tree ordinance. Was it related to the current ordinance and where it might change in the future? So I'm not quite sure I understood that question.
I was trying to get a commitment that you would follow whatever changes and that you wouldn't be just following some.
Michael, just to clarify, once we have and Hugh knows this, once we have a validly issued building permit, then we would be adhering to the ordinance in place at the time the building permit's issued. But any new building permit would be subject to whatever ordinance is in effect, including amendments at the time the building permit is issued.
And then on the trees, and I think Lou, that may have been used, that is in the footprint of the C3 building. So obviously, we'd have to move that building somewhere else, which would be a problem. And as we've said, we'll work with the city's arborists to the extent that any of those trees can be transplanted and the city confirms that they can be transplanted. That's something that we're certainly committed to doing. So, we have studied those trees. We're going to be developing this thing in phases. We'll continue to evaluate them, and anything that can be transplanted will be transplanted. And that's a commitment that we're willing to make. But again, we'll want to work with the city arborists to make sure that what we are transplanting will actually survive.
Okay. So the parking subsidy or the minimum 50% parking rate also does not include the revised commercial tenants to have single occupancy vehicles. I thought that's what we were trying to prevent.
Yeah, no. Sorry, Lou. No, it disincentivizes driving by requiring the landlords, the tenants, to provide additional subsidies for public transit and keep going, make sure that whatever conditions and requirements are part of this development, just as we did with Kendall. And so, as you can see in the Canal development, we are building out consistent of those parcels in perpetuity. So whatever we agree to today will basically carry through indefinitely for the future. Mary asked about, if I understand correctly, it was regarding the continuity of residential buildings. The phasing it's really, and Anthony kind of described a little bit, but the phasing, the reason there's a gap there, it actually has a lot just to do with construction logistics. Because we're committing to creating the open space at the corner of 3rd Street first, which is clearly something that the community has been pushing for a long time. And we're making that major investment in something that the community wants, together with the community center and the community center park. It means that we're essentially phasing from east to west, which because we are locked on the west side, we're tight on space to be able to build those buildings. So the R2A is just the site logistics of how you build. You got to figure out like, where am I going to put my construction trailers and how the trucks access? So it really has to do with just our building.
The first thing I saw on that, Mike, is I didn't know why you weren't building from west to east. And then I noticed you left a hole so you could have a lay down area for the rest of the buildings. You're right. It tricky site, once you close it in.
Yep. Ted, I appreciate your comment about the open space. I think it's something that we have continued to struggle with. We're trying very hard to balance all the competing needs, and every move has a ripple effect. We tried in this update to both increase the size of the 3rd Street Park, and hopefully you could get that sense from the renderings and the video that it has gotten physically bigger, but then also the layout that Gary and his team have come up with really does create the kind of openness at that corner that everyone is looking for. We are constrained by our ability to shrink building footprints. These are commercial buildings. and quite frankly, and David, you can jump in here. Tenants are looking for bigger footprints, not smaller footprints. This is about collaboration is really a horizontal thing. And there's actually been studies that come out of MIT about the amount of collaboration that happens when people are adjacent on the same floors versus in different floors. And so what's happening is that you're seeing tenants looking for 35, 40,000 square foot footprints because they can get more people together collaborating. And the smaller you get the footprints, the harder it is and the less attractive those things are for the tenants to create the kind of dynamism that we're looking for in these buildings. So we really feel that we have kind of squeezed the sites as much as possible. We've given up space on the west side to protect the Lowry Road trees. We've created the park on the east side. So there's really not much juice left there in terms of squeezing footprints down. On the retail, I think that Ted, that was also your question about the retail, the pavilions. Kristen described what we're trying to do there. So there's a couple of things there. One is that whole continuity that we're doing on Broadway is to create that double loaded corridor, which any retail person will tell you is a much better dynamic environment to do that. The reason they're permanent is in part because of the support structure that comes with it. Kristen described some of the potential uses that are smaller retails, incubators. If we don't have some infrastructure associated with it, it means that an operator coming in now has to come with portable stuff and has to run across to the community center to go to the bathroom. So there are things like that that lend themselves to having some level of permanency, but trying to make it as transparent as possible. And when we come back for design review, we'll have a lot more detail about exactly how that can work and how we can make those spaces as transparent as possible. Salman, could you confirm which page in the development plan? Anyway, we do have, and I'll get you the name. Thank you, Tom. I should know that. Page 45, I believe that's volume 2, that has the layout. It's also in the PTDM plan, the layout of the garage, the 3 levels of the garage. If you have additional questions after you see that, I'll be happy to address them. And then last, I think, yes, on the loading, sorry, the delivery. So Potter Street is an existing street and is required to service the GSA building. So Potter Street is going to be in place. 5th Street extension is something that the community and the city has really asked us to create to break up the city blocks and create this connectivity. So those 2 streets essentially are there and will carry whatever vehicle traffic is appropriate. The loading, so essentially the loading that is happening on the commercial buildings, the real impact really is on C2 and C3, because even if we were able to consolidate below grade, we would have to have a ramp somewhere in 5th Street. So really all you'd pick up is a little bit of space on the south end of Kendall Way, which isn't a whole lot in terms of adding to space. We actually had a pocket park there before we moved things around. So when we looked at it, we really figured that the real goal is if we can keep traffics, on the major streets to the extent possible and open up that center space, minimize truck traffic, that would be the way to minimize conflicts between trucks and pedestrians and cyclists. And then Kathy, your comment about the staff memos. So there are, I would say 95% of the comments there. There are a few things in there that are slightly inconsistent. For example, there's a comment about additional parking on 5th Street. And in fact, we've been pushed to remove parking to give up space for the cycle tracks. So there are a few areas where there's a slight disconnect between what's in the CDD memo and what's in the traffic and parking memo. But I think for the most part, there's nothing in there that was troublesome for us. I think there are actually some great suggestions and ideas that we would be happy to consider when we get to the next phase of design. There's a little guidance in here about things that we can consider at that level of detail when we actually have a team focus on individual buildings. And so I don't think, and I'll have to get my team to jump in here. Anything in the memo that was troublesome, but.
No, and Michael, just to, because we did, Madam Chair, thank you for that question. And we did, Jeff is, as you know, tenacious and proactive. So I think we actually had more conversations this time because he was going away, and Daniel has been fantastic. I don't, and I'll let Darren also speak to this. I don't see any condition that has some flexibility in it to be any more challenging than anything we've ever worked out in the past at written decision. So it's not uncommon that language has to be worked out, and there's nothing in there that I see that will be a challenge, but I'll let Darren also maybe jump in.
Sure, thank you, Anthony. So, generally speaking, and I guess I'll leave it to Daniel or others to clarify, to either agree with this. But I think that, we have general alignment on the conditions. There are some tweaks and revisions to clarify, address some nuances, but as a general matter, I think we have alignment on the conditions that were, the draft conditions that are out there, with some need for some revisions, but I don't think anything where we're at loggerheads on them.
If I may, Chair Conley, yeah, I went over prior to the decision being finalized at this stage.
Okay. And Catherine, I could just add that I really want to thank the staff because they have dedicated a lot of time, both by themselves offline in their spare time, what they have, but also working with us, and that's both CDD, DPW, and traffic and parking, in working through a lot of these issues so that we really are in good alignment with them, given where we are today.
Okay. Thank you all for that. And that's helpful to know kind of where those discussions stand. All right. Let me then turn to the board with the question of how we would like to proceed now, given that it is 8:30 and we have 2 more matters on our agenda for tonight. Is this a scenario where we want to go forward and see if we can make all the necessary findings and give CDD the guidance that they need to write a memo or write the decision, pardon me, or are there do we want to discuss what we'd like the applicant to work on and come back to us with? So where are people on this, and in terms of what we should do this evening?
No need to come back.
Okay. So Steve would push through to a decision. Other thoughts?
Hugh, pages of documents and letters and testimony. And 2 of them were actually covered in the initial, in Michael, that he would follow, he would do what I think ought to be done on the tree requirements as they modify. So I think, I don't know what else I could do and what else I want to think about.
I'm not pushing to continue this. I'm literally trying to get a sense of the board of, like, are we at a point where it makes sense to discuss and go through findings and see where we are, or do we have more questions? Tom, let's hear from you.
Well, it simply goes back to first principles of what we're and to Steve's question, what we're approving tonight, and the level of detail in question. Many of the questions that I have actually would rightfully be handled at the detailed review of the buildings or the sites as they come before us in the future. So the question tonight was, can we work through the armature that would be consistent with the cry for flexibility in the memo that we've been given? It's also unprecedented, right, that we have the draft decision before us in that memo. lengthy, albeit I'm not a lawyer. I didn't pick it through word by word, but the armature is there, and we've just heard conversations both from staff representatives and from the owners' representatives saying that they're very close in terms of an understanding that this is where at this when it comes back, if we're still sitting on the board 20 years from now, probably will be. Can't get rid of us that easily. So I think we could probably work it out tonight in another half hour.
Okay. I like putting a clock on it. That sounds to me right. Then we can start working through the various findings we need to make. Pull up my cheat sheet here from staff. And all right. So to go forward this evening, what we need to do is approve the PUD final development plan by making a finding that it continues to conform to the criteria for the approval of a development proposal as we found in the preliminary determination. And it contains revisions to the proposal in response to our preliminary determination that we think are responsive and make it more appropriate. And design guidelines, the planning and design principles established by the Volpe Working Group, and the Volpe Design Site Guideline. Volpe Design.
So many findings. Is
Yes.
it possible for Swathi to put up something that we can be simultaneously looking at while you're
while I'm walking you through them? Swathi, is that possible? Let's see.
Catherine, do you want to look at the memo?
Yes.
Okay. Give me
yeah,
a
that was public, you know, and we've all seen that already, but it would be nice to see the language while you're going through it.
Yeah. Okay. 1 second. Thank you.
And Catherine, while Swathi is doing that, I'd just like to point out there are a couple findings that I think staff would like to highlight over on the record while we have the board present.
Okay.
And at some point, I don't know if it should be before or after we recite these findings, talking about a potential extension to filing the decision, because we do have kind of a quick turnaround on that.
Yep. So typically we go over the extensions because the applicants tend to be a lot more amenable to granting them after we've made all of our findings. So we typically do that at the end, but I appreciate the reminder. Great. Thank you, Swathi.
Sure.
Okay. So Daniel, I'm going to have you put a pin in the ones you specifically want us to opine on or get clarification on. I'm going to go through kind of what we have in the memo in this table first, and then if you can direct us to those areas. I think I flagged a couple of pages where I saw specific questions. Tom, did you have a thought on?
Yeah, just my understanding, I found the boxes in the memo really helpful, just sort of recommendations. And I indicated there were maybe as many as 10 areas which would require either discussion or actual findings, given what the staff was recommending there. So,
yeah, that I agree. As a note that those boxes were very helpful. So let me walk quickly then through the first couple of pages here, which are the general findings we'll need to make. So I had gone through the first two boxes: approval of the PUD final development plan, reference policy plans in the PUD 7 district. We had not yet gone over the objectives for the PUD 7 special permit. But let's see. I'll just go through and read/summarize these to quickly get them on the record. So objectives for the special permit include providing a mix of commercial including research and technology and residential uses, with particular emphasis on ground floor or retail along 3rd Street and Broadway. For residential uses, incorporating a diversity of dwelling unit sizes that are appealing and accessible to a variety of users, including families with children and households from a variety of socioeconomic backgrounds. Breaking up large blocks, so to seamlessly integrate with the surrounding urban fabric of Kendall Square, East Cambridge, Wellington, Harrington, and the Port neighborhoods. Sensitively interfacing with adjacent land uses, sensitively managing the height and bulk of new buildings to reduce the impact of shadows, reduce detrimental environmental impacts, provide an appropriate scale, and not otherwise diminish the health and safety of the area around the development parcel, and establish an urban character at street wall height that is distinct from the taller tower elements. Also looking to create an integrated network of high quality streets and open spaces, integrate development with open space physically and functionally by means of building orientation, active frontages, location of building entrances, etc., and provide a strong street edge on major public streets. Okay. All right. Provide active ground floors that animate the streets, fostering a spirit of inclusiveness and diversity, enhancing the architectural diversity and aesthetic qualities, promoting best practices of environmental sustainability and district-wide planning and establishing design objectives, demonstrating a commitment to implementing a transportation demand management and mitigation program consistent with the reduced parking mandated in this PUD zoning and the capacity limitations of the transportation network. And then we get to our usual project review special permit criteria where we have to find that the project will have no substantial adverse impact on city traffic within the study area upon review of the traffic indicators and the mitigation efforts proposed, and that the project is consistent with the urban design objectives, and then of course our general special permit criteria. So keeping all of those findings in mind, Daniel, can you help us with the additional areas where it would be helpful to get clarification or have the board discuss specific findings or conditions on the record?
Sure, there are just 3 additional findings that we'd like the board to make in granting this final development plan. And then when we get to conditions, there are some additional conditions we'd like to highlight as well.
Okay.
So in terms of the findings, the first finding that we would request is that the planning board find that the entertainment venue qualifies as active space per the definition in 13.96.1. The second finding is that the proposed height increase of building C2 to 280 feet with the modified floor plate is consistent with the PUD 7 guidelines and objectives. And number 3, that all retail and consumer service establishment uses listed in section 4.35 and 4.36 of the recently amended retail zoning be permitted as active space, with the exception of any automobile-oriented retail uses.
Got it. All right. Let's take those 3 findings specifically and see if board members have comments on either the finding that C2 at 280 feet, but a reduced floor plate, it is consistent with the zoning, or that both the entertainment venue and all retail in the new retail zoning, except for automobile related uses, count as active space. Comments on any of those?
They all seem fine to me.
Okay.
I agree, Hugh.
Thank you, Hugh.
Tom, I agree. They seem reasonable.
All right. Does anyone have any concerns about making those? Amongst those, we will make, presuming we also are set on the conditions. So as was noted, staff has taken the trouble to write up draft conditions for this, which are in the last 10 pages or so of the memo, as has traffic and parking. Traffic and parkings are not written in terms of conditions. And Daniel, those are incorporated by reference into the conditions, right?
That's correct.
Okay, as are DPWs from their earlier memo?
Yes, DPW has reviewed the suggested conditions as well.
Great. And MIT has indicated that provided that there's flexibility in to work out the exact wording and the board to work with them as the project continues. They are, I forget how it was artfully put, but largely in agreement with the conditions, and there weren't any obstacles there that they didn't think could be overcome in drafting the decision. So we're in good shape there. But Daniel, you said there are a number of conditions you'd like us to specifically discuss and/or opine on.
Thank you, Catherine. Not necessarily debate or discuss if it's not needed, but we thought, there are several conditions included, and so that we thought it might be important just to highlight a few that might be a little different from other PUDs that we've worked with, so that the board is aware.
That would be great. Thank you.
So there's 11 of them, but I will move quickly through them. So number one is that the draft legal mechanism language for guaranteed public open space would be submitted to the city at the time of continuing design review for that respective open space. Number two is that the western terminus of Broad Canal Way would include a permanently guaranteed public passageway to 6th Street Park. Number three is that a plan for innovation space for the development plan would be included as part of the design review for the first commercial phase of development. Number four is that an increase in residential and active use with a commensurate decrease in office and lab use would be approvable as a minor amendment. Number five is that the phasing plan would allow for the completion of residential buildings, open spaces, and public improvements earlier, if so desired by the applicant. Number six is that commercial development in future phases could occur out of sequence of the phasing plan as long as it does not negatively impact the sequencing of residential development or other public benefits. Number seven is that the planning board would be authorized to give approval on a case-by-case basis for proposed active spaces that do not fit within the pre-approved active space uses in the suggested conditions. Number eight is that prior to completing the first building containing active space and/or retail uses, a process would be established and mutually agreed upon between the city and the applicant regarding the recruitment and monitoring of minority and women-owned retailers for proposed active spaces. Number nine is that a plan for the formation and ongoing engagement of the Retail and Open Space Advisory Committee, which is part of the letter of commitment from the applicant, would be provided to CDD prior to the completion of the first building containing retail and/or active space. Number 10 is that buildings undergoing future design review adhere to the sustainable design standards applicable at the time of design review, provided that the design review is completed within 2 years of the start of the building's construction. And the last one is that as part of green building review and design review for individual building sites, the applicant will continue to explore opportunities for heating load sharing, future electrification, and embodied carbon offsets from construction.
Okay, that's a mouthful. I want to go back, I think it's to number 10, which I think gets to a point raised by several board members about complying with various laws in place at the time. I think I heard you say that they will comply with the laws in place at the time of continuing design review, provided that continuing design review is completed within 2 years of construction. I think that was supposed to be the other way.
Right, construction within 2 years. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
There were so many words, I wasn't sure. I'm like, either I don't understand this or yeah, Danielle is, out of all of them, just flipped 2 words. Other questions, clarifications for Daniel on any of those? Mary.
I just have one, and I'm sorry that I don't remember which number it was, but it had to do with the retail and racial and equity plan. There was something in there that said it would be available after the completion of the first building.
No, Mary, I'm sorry. That would be before the completion of the first building, that retail and advisory committee would be established. And in the letter of commitment, it's that 6 months prior to the completion of the first building, that building plans would be presented to that advisory committee for recommendations or advice on tenanting those spaces.
Okay, so they'll have plenty of time then to add comment. That's perfect. Thank you. Appreciate the clarification, Daniel.
Other questions or clarification for Daniel on any of the specific conditions the staff has wanted to highlight for us as new and unique about this unique project? Hugh.
I found another little piece in the design review commission's design review process. Section B is a list of things that need to be provided. And on number 7, talks about a scaled and dimension roof plan, indicating all features proposed to be located on the roof, including the arrangement of any rooftop mechanical systems and enclosure, and any proposed lighting be visible from outside the building. I think the plan also needs to show green roof areas.
Okay. That's a good addition.
This is Tom. Maybe it's a question, but also something I'd love to have on the record, given last week's frustrating definitions around design review over open space. I think it has to be clear that the planning board will review the design details of the open space as it is brought forward with the adjacent structures that we will provide design review there.
Yeah. And Daniel, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think we have learned from that experience and are explicitly calling out that design review of open space areas is required here.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Clarity always helps avoid frustration down the road. Okay. Any other questions? Hugh, did you have another one?
I do not.
Okay. All right. So we have gone through all of the findings we need to make, and those additional findings staff has requested we specifically get on the record. We've gone over the conditions, and those unique ones have been highlighted, and we've asked our questions about those and others. Do any board members have any additional questions or concerns about either the CDD memo, traffic and parking's memo, anything in the DPW memo before we proceed to vote on these as a holistic matter? All right, I'm seeing none. So I take it then we are along with incorporating the conditions that contained in the staff memos as clarified here. The board and the applicant.
The applicant is good.
All right, that's what we like to hear. Then is there a motion to grant request?
Louis second.
All right, we have Steve moved, Louis seconded, and we'll do a roll call vote.
Roll call on that motion. Lou Bocci,
Yes.
H. Theodore Cohen,
Yes.
Steve Cohen,
Yes.
Mary Flynn. That's all members voting in favor.
All right, before we move on from this matter, as Daniel reminded us, we do have a very quick, Daniel, do we have a recommendation on, let me say, do you and MIT have agreement on an appropriate length extension at this time?
What staff would recommend, and we of course would like to hear from the applicant, to the D-Day extension would take us to September 28th. But then what we usually like to do, just in terms of having to file it at the clerk's office.
Can amenable to that, an extension to October 1st.
That's fine. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Daniel.
All right, then is there a motion? Roll call vote.
Roll call on that motion. Lou Bocci,
Yes.
H. Theodore Cohen,
Yes.
Steve Cohen,
Yes.
Mary Flynn,
Yes.
Hugh Russell,
Yes.
Tom Sinevich,
Yes.
and Catherine Preston.
We'll be in recess till 9 p.m. and board members come back at that time. We'll see how quickly we can fully address the two.
Thanks everyone for your hard work.
Yeah. Good job. Mhm.
All right, we can get back into session and move on to the next item on our agenda. So the next item on the agenda tonight is a continued public hearing on case PV 379, a special permit application by Ivy League Technologies LLC to convert an existing space to a cannabis retail store at 95 First Street. And again, we'll have CDD staff summarizing why this is before us.
Good evening, board. This is Swati Joseph doing that for this project. This application was first heard on June 15th, and the hearing was continued by the board so that the applicant could conduct additional public outreach. The applicant has since provided a report on additional outreach efforts. As a reminder, it is the business A zoning district where a cannabis retail store is allowed by special permit from the planning board. And the building was also subject to a previously granted PUD special permit from the planning board. The special permit number is PB 231A. There are no new staff memos, but the criteria for approval and comments from CDD's zoning and urban design staff are provided in the prior memo. And staff are present to answer any questions the board may have, and memo had also been provided by TP&T department. As another reminder, the board asked at the last hearing whether the applicant was comfortable with a special permit condition that the amount of clear glass on the building could not be reduced from what is shown without coming back to the board, so that should be incorporated if the board decides to grant the special permit today.
All right. Thank you very much, Swati, for that summary. Okay, so then we will hear from the applicant. Presenting is Chauncey Spencer, who is the applicant. We received your additional material, and hopefully you can give us a concise update on what has transpired with your application since we last saw you.
Good evening, board and Madam Chair and members of the public. The continuance, like was said, the continuance was centered around the community outreach, and there were also some additional comments that were that one of the board members had brought up in regards to the parking lot, or the lack of assigned parking and the potential consequences that Sankofa traffic may have on the other tenants' availability or available parking and navigation of deliveries also. In the memo, I'm proposing that to provide signage and parking assignment to ensure the smooth functioning of the parking lot by selecting the 4 locations furthest from the post office loading area, which occurs, I should state that the loading occurs in the early morning prior to Sankofa operations. And the closest 4 parking, we'll be selecting the 4 closest parking spaces to the establishment, which will eliminate the potential problems of vehicle navigation while ensuring proper proportion of allocated parking spaces. I apologize about the car out there. Perfect timing. Anyhow, and the second issue was the community outreach. I was happy to meet with the community members, specifically the East Cambridge planning team and One First Condo Association, and presented my plans and answered questions from the groups. Additionally, I posted a slideshow of my presentation on the company website. I believe you were forwarded the planning team, East Cambridge planning team's letter of support with the stated conditions. I will say that 3 of the 4 are covered by regulations, and the concern about the reduction of future parking. I should mention that Sherwin-Williams, which is one of the tenants in the building, has much more parking, which is 5 spaces, than the store needs. It's roughly about 20 I forget this square footage size, but it's roughly about 2,500 to 2,300 square feet of space. And I think that there are no requirements for that, although I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure you guys are well versed on what the requirements are for a 20 square foot retail establishment. But one could say that 5 parking spaces compared to our 4 allocated is something that we will be able to look at going forward when the lease is renegotiated within under a year's time. So the concerns were about the reduction of the East Cambridge planning team had concerns about the reduction of possible reduction of the metered parking on First Street, and so my mention of the possible renegotiation of the parking spaces is something to consider when considering that particular concern. So our on-site parking, again, like I said, will likely be renegotiated in the future. And I guess that is it. There were no other concerns that I think that they were all centered largely around the parking and the insufficient community outreach. So I guess I will end here and allow the board members to ask questions.
All right, thank you very much. So again, as with the previous hearing, we'll move from the presenter's update into the public comment period. And we have received the East Cambridge Planning Team memo, but I don't believe to the record. So we will begin as previously, calling on speakers who have raised their hands. Any members of the public who do wish to speak should now click the button that says raise hand. If you're calling in by phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. So I'll now ask staff to unmute the speakers one at a time. Begin by saying your name and address, and we'll confirm that we can hear you. And after that, you'll have up to 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Catherine. It looks like our first speaker is Luke Smith, followed by Chandra Batra. So Luke, please unmute yourself and then begin by giving your name and address. Ask again, Luke Smith, please unmute yourself and give your name and address. Okay, it looks like Luke is still having some technical difficulties, so we'll move along. The next speaker is Chandra Batra, followed by Heather Hoffman. Chandra, please unmute yourself and begin by giving your name and address.
Hi, my name is Chandra Batra, and I live at 52 Trowbridge at apartment 5 in Cambridge. And I'm here calling to testify in favor of the dispensary going forward and saying that the candidate is an economic equity candidate, and it's really a pleasure to see more Black businesses of every kind choose Cambridge as their home, and that we need more equity as well as reparations. And I'm looking forward to actually working on the Reparation Council for coming to some of the meetings on reparations for Cambridge, because we need more economic diversity as well as economic equity in the city. I'm also saying that we need more cannabis access in the city to the huge host of people who don't have medical cards, who don't have recommendations, who aren't able to grow. This dispensary is an adult use dispensary, but we need more access for patients. And I hope that this provides a stopgap until we actually have an actual discussion in the city about what equity and medical access should actually look like and how to provide those equitably in the city. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Heather Hoffman, and I will also just give a last call for any speakers who wish to speak. Thank you. Heather, please unmute yourself and then give your name and address.
Hi, Heather Hoffman, 213 Hurley Street. And I am just a couple of blocks from this proposed location. I really hope that Mr. Spencer does a fantastic job with this business. He's been through a lot getting to this point. And I also want to put in a plug for meetings in person. The fact that the previous meeting happened in person meant that Mr. Spencer and I were able to talk to each other, and I was able to help him make contact with the various people in the area that he should have talked to. I'm kind of sad that the city was unable to help him with that, but I am extremely glad that I was, because it was a delight to meet him, and it'll be a delight to have him down the street. So I hope that you will vote to approve his permit, and that his business will be successful. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Charles Hines. Charles, please begin by unmuting yourself and giving your name and address.
Hi, my name is Charles Hines. I live at 207 Half Charles Street, East Cambridge. Current president of the East Cambridge planning team. I'm here to speak on their behalf. The proponents already gone through our concerns. I wanted to state the reasons why we like this application. I thought the store location was appropriate. It's in a retail corridor, not near a park, school, church, or places where children congregate. The design of the store is very attractive and did not detract from the sense of activity on the street. And social equity, that the Ivy League Technologies is an economic empowerment applicant. He says if the applicant can satisfy the planning board, the parking situation is fine. We asked the planning board to approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you. I do see Luke Smith's hand raised again. We're going to give you one more shot here, Luke. So please begin by giving your name and address. I'll ask one last time. Luke Smith, please unmute yourself and give your name and address. All right, I do see one other hand up, Bjorn Poonen. Please give your name and address and unmute yourself and you can begin.
Hello, I'm Bjorn Poonen, 303 3rd Street. I just think I haven't looked too much into it. I think it's.
Thank you. Chair Connolly, that's all the speakers we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Seeing none. So the traffic and parking memo specifically includes a request from the applicant that the contribution to one-time contribution towards non-car improvements that the city has required of all economic empowerment applicants. The applicant in this case has requested that the contribution, rather than being half paid prior to the issuance of the building permit and half paid prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit, the applicant has requested that the contribution be paid within the first month of the store opening rather than the first half due prior to the issuance of a building permit. Traffic and parking has indicated that they are okay with that request. If the board is, do any board members have concerns about the request for a change in timing consistent with what's detailed in traffic and parking's memo for that?
No problem.
Okay. I'm seeing no concerns being raised by board members about that request, so that'll be, include that among the conditions. So as the board was very favorable about the design in general, I think the other conditions we have discussed previously, as Swati noted, was that, that any change to the glass facade have to come back to the board for approval because it is an unusual cannabis dispensary that is proposing so much glass on the facade, and this board is generally supportive of that. But the applicant is trying an untested technology to see if the Cannabis Control Commission will approve the essentially what I think of as the laptop privacy protector approach to making sure the product is not visible to the public. So I think everyone was very supportive of that, but because it does, whether or not that gets approved by the Cannabis Control Commission obviously impacts the urban design of how the store fits into the city. If that were to change and not be approved, we'd like you to come back. And if it is approved, we'd like you to tell all of your fellow business competitors about it. All right, any other conditions or items that, beyond what is flagged in the staff memos that board members want to discuss or raise on the record? All right, then I will walk us through the findings and we can move this applicant on. So as usual with the cannabis retail store special permit, we need to make the findings that this is located in a zoning district where this is allowed, which Swati has reminded us it is. It's located in a permanent building, is not within 1,800 feet of another store unless it is operated by an economic empowerment applicant, is not within 300 feet of an existing public or private K-12 school or 300 feet of a public children's playground, youth athletic facility, or public youth recreation facility, unless it were sufficiently buffered, that there's no packaging or repackaging of cannabis products on site, that the site design provides convenient, safe, and secure access and egress for clients, employees arriving to and leaving from the site using all modes of transportation. Location and design of the cannabis use will not detract from the sense of activity with opaque, unwelcoming facade at ground floor in retail area. And as it's noted, this has potential for making that much better than we've seen in prior versions of this use. Loading, refuse, and service areas are designed to be secure and shielded from abutting uses. And building restrictions on visibility into the building's interior. And that the facility will provide information and programs you will provide that information to medical patients as to where that can be obtained. And for the record, for the transcript, the applicant is nodding. Thank you for affirming that. All right, and then as usual, our general special permit criteria. Do any board members have any concerns about making any of those findings or any conditions other than those we've discussed and are in the staff memos that we need to include in our findings? All right. So then, is there a motion to grant the requested special permits with those conditions based on the board's findings that the applicable special permit criteria have been met?
So moved.
Ted moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Mary seconds. We'll have a roll call vote then.
Roll call on that motion. Lou Bocci.
Yes.
Tom Sinevich.
Yes.
And Catherine Preston Connolly.
Yes.
It's all members voting in favor.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your outreach efforts to the community. I know it was a delay you weren't counting on, but I am very pleased with the outcome. So thank you.
I would just like to say thank you to the members of the CDE. They've been great and wonderful and helpful through this entire process, and I could not have done it without them. And then, of course, as been said, that I've been through a lot, and Cambridge has been great, and I'm happy to be part of the city.
Well, we look forward to welcoming your staff. The next item on our agenda, which is a review of BZA cases, and there is one case that we are going to review, which is BZA 123R 3rd Street location, as well as dimensional variances from the various district requirements. And CDD staff is going to remind us what the
a component of a proposal by Biomed Realty to develop a new building on the former Constellation Center site in Kendall Square and the gas transfer station site on 3rd Street. Last year, the City Council adopted the Plan Unit Development Canal District Kendall, or PUD-CDK zoning, to enable development to occur on that site. And that zoning change was recommended favorably by the Planning Board. And we expect that this future special permit application would come to the Planning Board for a PUD-CDK special permit in the near future. Because the gas transfer station is only permitted by special permit by the Board of Zoning Appeals, it will need to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals. It discussed this proposal with CDD staff, and I believe the applicant or representatives of the applicant are present to discuss details or answer any questions the board may have.
Great, thank you, Daniel. All right, so I believe Ted pulled this one, but Hugh also came in a close second with flagging it. Does one of you want to start us out with comments or questions you'd like to have us discuss?
Well, I'll start. I don't have any questions, except I believe we already did approve the development on the abutting site, which will hopefully have the large performance center, but that is really dependent in large measure upon the relocation of the gas transmission. And we were to make a recommendation to the BZA that this be approved. It will help this site, will end up necessary, but at this point, an unattractive element on the 3rd Street, and move it to where the rest.
If Ted's comments constitute a motion to approve, I would be happy to second that.
That motion. No further discussion. So I think then what we're hearing is, yes, the Planning Board, having previously approved the project that this enables, is supportive of sending a positive recommendation to the BZA to facilitate this. So on the motion made by Ted, seconded by Hugh, can we get a roll call vote?
A roll call on that motion. Lou Bacci.
Yes.
H. Theodore Cohen.
Yes.
Steve Cohen.
Yes.
Mary Flynn.
Yes.
Hugh Russell.
Yes.
Tom Zanevich.
Yes.
Succinct and efficient summary, and moving us through that item very quickly. That does conclude the business on our agenda. Daniel or Swati, is there anything I've missed? Anything else that staff needs to add? No.
So we do not have a meeting next Tuesday.
I hope the same for you, Swati.
Yeah.